Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. Where to begin? We've got a playlist going on with real fundamental ideas about music theory you can use for yourself, music theory for everybody. We've looked at naming notes, scales, diatonic chords, dominant chords, seventh chords. Today I want to talk about another trick, a basic fundamental manipulation that we do with chords. It's called an inversion. When you invert a chord, you take the basic notes from the chord and you put them in a different order. Doesn't have to have the root on the bottom, could be on the top. Can be tricky. There's lots of notes in a chord. How do I arrange it? What's the rules? What's the idea? Let's take a tune, look at it a couple of different ways. Maybe when we're done by the end of the video, you'll know a lot more about chord inversions. Well, first of all, just a little housekeeping. If this is the second or third video of mine you've watched and you're not subscribed, now's a great time to subscribe. You'll be notified when I do my videos. And this series, this fundamental series, Where to Begin, I think has a lot of use. There's plenty of other things going on the channel, more sophisticated ideas, reviews of software and some hardware. Just basically, what do we do as musicians? That's my question. So what do we do as musicians when we're arranging? I've decided to use the old standard. It's an old chestnut. Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And Take Me Out to the Ball Game is a pretty simple song. Listen to these three versions of it. It's the same melody. We're in the key of C. I've just handled the chords differently in each example. You can see the chords above me here. Back to C. I'm playing all these chords in root position. And it means the chords hop around. You can see they're like little blocks on the screen that go up and down. It's not very elegant. Well, the simplest solution to that is to take notes from the top or bottom and move them around. That's an inverted G7. Much smoother. And the melody's in the clear, isn't it? It still really separates the melody from the chords. The final trick is to have notes from the chord follow the melody. That's what happens in the last example. This would be great for string writing or horns. There's definitely inversion going on here. Great melody. I've heard it my whole life and known it forever. Well, let's look at how to picture a chord and how to invert it. So for me, inversion is about knowing the names of the notes and the sort of identity of the notes of each chord. And that's where I like to begin. So we'll do a little review and see where that takes us. The diatonic chords in the key of C appear as a stack of thirds. I'm just going up the C scale, playing stacks of thirds. Each of them has a name, but perhaps more importantly, there's individual notes within each as well. C, E, G is a C triad. Now, those three notes are the thing that makes that triad a C triad. It's not the fact that it's those notes together like this. It's those three notes. That's it. And that's great because that means I can play those three notes in a different configuration. I can take the E and play it down here. And I still have a C chord. In fact, I have a beautiful C chord, sometimes called a drop 2 version of it. This is an inversion. It's a great inversion. Listen to how beautiful this sounds. It's so much better than this. Here I'm going to invert it using drop 2. enormously more beautiful right away because we inverted the chords. Now, my basic rule for inverting chords is laziness. And in fact, there's a rule called the rule of parsimony. Parsimony means cheap, or somebody who doesn't want to spend a lot of money or do a lot. And in fact, I don't want to do a lot. I'll show you what I mean. If I'm going to go from the chord C to the chord G7, my hand picks up and moves. And that pick up and go, that hopping motion, would be awkward to sing. It's difficult for the hand. If you're sliding yourself along the guitar, that's hard too. So we have two simple rules that we use. Let's make this G7 chord here a 3-note chord. So here are my two chords, C and G7. My simple rule is this. If I have one of the notes from the next chord, or two of the notes, or three of the notes from the next chord in the first one already, and I do, it has to stay right there. That's an excellent first rule, and it anchors the chord progression. I know that that top voice is still going to be a G, and now I know that I need a B and an F. And what happens is this: C in root position becomes G7 in inversion. And really what happened was these two bottom voices changed a little bit of a position. The E went up to F, the C went down to B. If I just play the C chord like so, we say it's a root position chord. If I play it with its third on the bottom, it's a first inversion. If I play it with the G on the bottom, it's a second inversion. If I have 4 notes, I could have a third inversion. What that means is my G chord, my G7, there's its root position, there's its first inversion, there's its second inversion, and because I have 4 notes, there's its third inversion. Those inversions are very useful for us as we move smoothly from chord to chord. So our chord progression, the yellow one up here, if I moved smoothly through it, might look like this. C, G7, C, G7, A7, D minor, D7, G7. I've tried to keep as much as possible every voice to a tiny little gesture. If I have the note, I keep it. All the other voices move by as little as possible. In fact, it's possible to have them move by only a step. My first rule was, if I have a note, I keep it. My second rule is all the other voices move only by a step. Sometimes I break that rule depending on how things work. Here you can see I've kept the G from the C to the G7 chord and back to the C and then to the G7. Now G7, everything could just go up to A7, but I want it to go down. And so here I broke the rule, and I broke it for a reason that is really very, very simple. I wanted that G to stay on top. So once I've broken the rule once, I'm going to go back to my basic trick, which is if I have the note, I keep it. If I don't have the note, it moves only by a step. Things are kept or moved only by a step. And I get beautiful smooth voice leading. Smooth voice leading is not only pleasing to the ear, it's easier to perform and it's easier to manage in your arrangement. Inverting chords leads to smooth voice leading. Well, the next step is to take a melody and figure out how to add notes underneath it. Now, I've had to put my glasses on to remember what I've done. The melody now becomes king, and I ask myself the question, what are the other notes from the chord that fit underneath it? So the very first melody note in Take Me Out to the Ball Game is a C. So is the second melody note. Then A, G, E, and now it's time for a G7 chord with the melodic tone G. So what I've done is ask myself the question, what other notes from the chord fit underneath? In the first instance, I have C on top, and I've added the E and the G. I've inverted the C chord. Now the C's on top. And then exactly the same thing, because it's just an octave up, another C. The next three melody notes, A, G, E, means I've got to do some tricks here, and you can see what I've done. I've put the C, the E here, and the C there underneath the A note, the melody note. It's kind of a passing tone. And then under the G, it makes perfect sense. So C on top, that's an inversion, sort of a root position. And then now I'm going down to an E melody, and so I invert the C chord in second inversion. There's a G that I need and a C that I need, and the E is the melody. I made it right to here. So going on to the A7 chord, this is a blast. I love that sound right there. The computer is confused because I'm not playing an A, but if I add the A, it says A7 over G. And the rest of it goes on. A7 to D, D, D. I'm just inverting chords. D7. If I add the D, the computer recognizes it. I'm just playing three notes because, as you know, I'm lazy. All of the voices are chasing the melody. The melody is king. I don't care if I never get back. The inversions are there to create smooth voice leading, and smooth voice leading is more pleasing to our ear. It always takes a little bit of extra time to get your inversions right, and it's worth it. It creates a much better, more sophisticated, elegant, and professional sounding arrangement. Well, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe. Ding the bell. You'll be notified when I do my videos. I'll see you next time.